prayer and related rites might be defined as the quintessential example of human activity in the religious realm. Liturgy is directed to God and is generally focused on praise or supplication. In this paper, however, I would like to explore the legal and political functions of liturgy, how liturgy can serve to delineate the boundaries of the community and define the legal actors that comprise that community. I will do so through an examination of one central legal text from the foundational corpus of the Tosefta, and with broad brushstrokes, I will try to illuminate the inner logic of this text, despite the time constraints which will require highlighting only some of the rulings therein. The opening tractate of the Mishnah and Tosefta, the collection of laws that serve as the foundation of the Jewish tradition of oral law, is called Tractate Brachot, or Blessings. This tractate presents a set and ordered Jewish liturgy, primarily composed of three divisions: the reading of the Shema and its blessings, prayer, the Amidah, and the blessings over meals. The last chapter of both Mishnah and Tosefta Brachot, however, is unusual. Mishnah Brachot chapter 9 deals largely with the Birkot HaRe'iyah, the blessings of vision. Blessings a person must recite when seeing different objects, encountering various natural phenomena, or hearing news or tidings of different kinds. These blessings, by their very nature, are neither set nor ordered, but rather present a reactive response to phenomena occurring in the world. The last chapter of the Tosefta, chapter 6, expands or complements many of the ideas found in the Mishnah, but also seems to be a hodgepodge assortment of numerous other blessings and homilies that did not fit neatly elsewhere in the tractate. In this lecture, however, I will argue that this is not so. Rather, a close analysis of the Tosefta reveals a well-formed proposal that focuses on the blessings over the commandments, and through this subject sets forth a sweeping vision of the commandments and their legal and political significance. I maintain that the Mishnah and Tosefta each grapple with the same theological problems formed in the wake of the destruction of the temple and ongoing Roman rule, yet they propose radically different solutions to this set of problems. A comparison between the conclusions of the Mishnah and the Tosefta affords the first clue to the differences between these two texts. The Mishnah concludes the chapter and the tractate as a whole by citing two decrees. One concerns the specific language of blessings in the temple, while the other directs people to greet one another with God's name. This last decree, which is found in Roman numeral number 1, is supported by 4 verses, indicating, together with its locus at the conclusion of the tractate, its significance and centrality. And I'll read it out loud. And they ordained that one should greet his fellow with the divine name. As it is said, and behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." And it says, "The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor." And it says, "Do not despise your mother when she is old." And it says, "It is time to act for the Lord, they have violated your law." Moshe Halbertal has suggested that this decree should be tied to the laws of blessing that precede it, and should be viewed as a precedent for ritual proclamation of God's name outside of the sancta. According to Halbertal, the decree appears at the conclusion of the tractate because it justifies the use of God's holy name outside of the temple. This transition was considered a violation of the Torah because it damaged the centralization of ritual in the temple. The justification for this action was the necessity of responding to the destruction of the temple by enabling God's presence in every place and not solely in the temple. In his book, Brothers Estranged, historian Adiel Schremer offers a historical context for this passage, arguing that the decree was based in a polemic against the heretics. He argues that the verses are not merely proof texts for the decree, but rather a presentation of the background and motivation for the decree. Examining the verses in their context reveals their intended meaning of the Mishnah. For instance, the verse from Judges, "The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor," is usually interpreted as support for the idea that God's name may be recited outside of the temple. Schremer, however, refers us to the broader context of this verse, which reads, "And Gideon said to him, 'O my Lord, is indeed the Lord with us? Why then has all this befallen us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us of? But now the Lord has forsaken us.'" This context reveals the Mishnah's use of the verses not merely as support for the decree that God's name may be invoked outside of the temple, but also as a theological argument. The Lord is with us, that responds to the ongoing anxiety about God's desertion. As a result of the destruction of the temple and the failure of the wars against the Romans, Palestinian Jews of the first 2 centuries underwent a profound existential and theological crisis. In response to those who interpreted these defeats as a sign that the God of Israel had been vanquished, the rabbis decreed that one must proclaim God's existence and his ongoing dwelling among his people by reciting countless benedictions throughout the day and by greeting one's fellow with a declarative formula, "The Lord is with us," or "The Lord is with you." This claim is buttressed specifically in chapter 9 of the Mishnah with the blessings of vision. As Talmudist Yishai Rosenzweig observes, these blessings are the most radical of all rabbinic benedictions in that they override the prohibition of "do not carry my name in vain" to the extreme. For these blessings are recited in any place, at any time, in immediate reaction to an external event and with no decorous preparation. On the other hand, these blessings also manifest most strongly the idea that the Lord is with us, for they translate all events in the world, earthquakes, thunder and lightning, good or bad tidings, as a sign of God's will. The rabbinic response to the existential and theological crisis of the Jews around them was to translate all natural events and give them new theological meaning as the intended purpose of God, thereby granting new meaning not only to cosmological and natural events, but to historical ones as well. The Tosefta, too, incorporates the decrees and verses cited in the Mishnah and dwells on the need for legal innovation in time of crisis. Yet notably, in the Tosefta, these materials do not appear at the very conclusion of the tractate, which is often the locus of ideological principles that undergird the legal rulings. Instead, the conclusion of the Tosefta, as throughout the chapter in its entirety, focuses on the commandments. The Tosefta, and now we'll have to start flipping through, and we won't read everything, obviously, but I'll refer you to the very end of the Tosefta, so it's ruling 625. The Tosefta ends with a statement that Rabbi Meir would repeatedly relate. Rabbi Meir would say, "There is no person from Israel who is not surrounded by mitzvot, commandments. Tefillin, phylacteries upon his head, tefillin upon his arm, a mezuzah upon his doorpost, and 4 fringes surrounding him. And concerning them," meaning the commandments, David said, "7 times a day I praise you for your righteous ordinances," right? So there's 7 commandments here. There's tefillin on the arm, tefillin on the head, a mezuzah, and 4 fringes. That makes 7. The passage prior to this one also cites a tradition in the name of Rabbi Meir, also focused on the commandments, asserting that there is no person from Israel who does not perform 100 commandments a day. Even more significantly, when we omit all parts of the Tosefta that parallel or elaborate on ideas found in the Mishnah, as the Tosefta frequently does, we can see that every one of the remaining passages shares the same concern with the commandments. I therefore suggest that the Tosefta is presenting an alternative vision to that of the Mishnah's response to the theological and existential crisis of the time. Our task is to unpack what this alternative vision consists of. Mishnah chapter 9 and Tosefta chapter 6 each focus on systems of blessings that are not part of the set daily liturgy defined by Shema, prayer, and blessings over meals. But the Mishnah focuses on the blessings of vision, which are blessings that deal with events that are external to human beings, miracles, natural phenomena, or events that have already occurred. By definition, these are events that have been initiated by God or by nature. By contrast, the Tosefta concentrates on the blessings over mitzvot, commandments, which by definition are actions performed by a person. This distinction distinction is highlighted by the homily in the Tosefta that precedes the central legal unit concerning blessings over the commandments, passage 6:8. Rabbi Dostai, son of Rabbi Anai, said in the name of Rabbi Meir, "Behold, Scripture states concerning Isaac, and I will bless you and multiply your seed for the sake of Abraham my servant." Isaac expounded and said, "Since a blessing is earned only through one's deed, he arose and sowed," and the rest of the Tosefta continues to support that idea. At first blush, this passage seems to be related to the context merely because it is concerned with blessings. But the awareness, the mindfulness that the Tosefta is concerned particularly with the role of blessings over commandments makes sense of the homily that focuses on divine blessing as a response to human activity, as stressed by Isaac's homily. A blessing is earned only through one's deeds. This homily serves as a prelude to the heart of the chapter of the Tosefta, a well-defined unit composed of rulings 9 through 14, which discuss the blessings over the commandments. The unit commences with the principle that one who performs any commandment recites a blessing over it. This is in passage 9. The Tosefta follows with a long list of concrete examples that I've bolded for you. The language of the Tosefta emphasizes again that commandments are an activity performed by the individual person, one who makes a sukkah for himself, one who makes a lulav for himself. Yet precisely this focus on the individual performing a commandment for himself underscores the communal language of the blessings. Two types of blessings occur in this list. The first, Shehechianu, or who has brought us to this time or occasion, is recited upon the creation of ritual objects employed in the fulfillment of commandments, while the second, characterized by the formula, who sanctified us through his commandments and commanded us, is recited at the time of the performance of the commandment itself. Although these blessings are recited individually, their wording is in the plural. Performance of the mitzvah is the province of the individual person, yet the language of the blessing ties that individual to a broader community of those who perform the commandments. Thus, fulfilling the commandments and reciting the blessing together strengthen the ties between law and sanctity. The individual's performance of the mitzvah serves as proof that he is part of the sanctified community. This conceptualization of the ties between individual and community is most clearly expressed in the legal principle that appears after the list of examples of blessings over commandments in passage 6:15. This principle states that 10 people who were performing 10 commandments, each one must recite a blessing for himself. If all were performing the same commandment, one recites the blessing for all of them. The ruling that one person may recite a blessing on behalf of others is predicated on the idea that the commandments tie different individuals together and create a communal bond between them. This concept is a rabbinic innovation that does not appear in previous Jewish legal texts. I suggest that this innovation is tied to the historical circumstances of the development of rabbinic literature. In the wake of their defeat by the Romans, Jews, and among them the rabbis, were faced with the complete loss of the institutions that constitute and bind a socio-political whole by providing collective boundaries. From the 2nd century CE onwards, the new boundaries for whatever was left of the Jews as a collective were potentially those of the Roman Empire. With respect to this body politic, the rabbis' project was to induce their followers to distinguish themselves through daily performance and practice. The blessings over the commandments compel constant awareness of the communal significance of each individual ritual act. Yet the idea that individuals are tied together into a community through mitzvot necessitates an analysis of who exactly comprises the community. Who are the individuals who can recite a blessing on behalf of others? Who are the agents that constitute the legal community in the rabbinic worldview? This question is answered through the examples provided by the Tosefta. The first 4 examples of blessings described in the Tosefta concern the commandments of Sukkah, Lulav, Tzitzit, and Tefillin. As Tzvi Novik has shown, these are stock examples of commandments. Their ritual nature distinguishes them from such secular commandments as giving charity and evokes God, the giver of the commandments. They also rely on tangible visual objects, rendering their performance highly visible at a specific defined time, similarly to what Shana was talking about in terms of ritual. Yet it seems no coincidence that these are also precisely the four examples given in Tosefta Kiddushin 1:10 to demonstrate the principle that women are exempt from positive, time-bound commandments. Indeed, this principle is explicitly referred to later on in our chapter, in 6:18, where the blessing, "who has not made me a woman," is justified because women are not obligated in the commandments. Indeed, undeniably, the entire passage in 6:18 is highly exclusionary, famously phrasing three blessings focused against three groups: non-Jews, women, and ignoramuses, or boors. Perhaps most telling is the justification for the blessing, "who has not made me a boor," for a boor does not fear sin. While scholars have long puzzled over this line in the Tosefta, in the context of the focus on the commandments, it makes perfect sense. One who does not know the law cannot perform it accurately, and will thus certainly sin, and perhaps cause others to sin as well. The blessing, "who has not made me a Gentile," is also inextricably tied to the penultimate example of a blessing over commandments presented in the Tosefta's list of examples, the blessing over circumcision in 6:12 and 13. This is the only blessing provided in such detail, and its liturgical formula further highlights the theme of nomistic election, with the lengthy formula blessing God, "who sanctified the beloved from the womb, and placed the mark of a statute in his flesh, and sealed his offspring with the sign of the sacred covenant." Yet the theme of nomistic election and covenant is present not only in the blessing over circumcision, but in fact in all of the blessings, and is expressed through the plural verbs in the formula, "who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us," highlighting the community that is created through the commandments. The significance of this choice of liturgy is underlined by comparison to both the Christian and Roman liturgies of the time. Common Christian practice was based on collective prayer, in which all present participated verbally. By contrast, in Roman religion, both public and private, one designated speaker addressed the divine on behalf of the group. Moreover, the wording of public prayers typically employed the first person singular of verbs of prayer. This ritual performance marked the social status of the ritual actor, or prayer, the paterfamilias in the home and the magistrate or priest in the public sphere. Indeed, as a scholar of Roman religion, Francis Hahn has written, "When considered as a system, what stands out is the virtual monopoly of public religion and prayer by the elite class. The highly visible roles of the elite in public ritual, in particular in recitation of prayers, serve to construct and reinforce their political domination." End quote. While rabbinic liturgy was also recited by one person on behalf of others, it is notable that the wording of the blessings is recited in the plural form of the verbs. Moreover, rather than emphasizing the hierarchy of social status, the blessings serve to equalize all those participating in the ritual, while simultaneously excluding those who are not Jewish learned men. Indeed, the Tosefta regarding the three exclusionary blessings ironically states that every person, Adam, must recite these blessings each day, incidentally clarifying who it is that the Tosefta considers a full person. In sum, throughout the chapter, the Tosefta is highly concerned with two themes: the significance of the commandments and the parameters of the community of the elect. As other scholars have shown, the defeat of Israel in the wars against Rome caused substantial theological crisis. Yet social scientists would also point out that such radical crisis is also necessarily accompanied by the disintegration of previously existing social forms, such as class and social status, gender roles, family, neighborhood, etc. The collapse of formally cultically and perhaps politically sanctioned frames of reference amounted to a radical crisis of detraditionalization. The final chapters of the Mishnah and Tosefta to the first tractate of the oral Torah presents two alternative responses to this profound crisis. The Mishnah proposes a radical theological vision of blessings as justification of God's actions in the world, and a sanctioned space for bringing God's name into the world. The Tosefta, by contrast, suggests that God's continued election of Israel will be demonstrated not merely by verbal reactions to pre-existing events, but rather through the active performance of the law. The liturgical innovation of the blessings over the commandments focuses the individual on the role of the commandments, creating the ties of covenantal community and defining that community's boundaries, while also testifying to an enduring belief in a mystic election. Thank you.